everyone, it's Ryan Fowler here with Jordan Kurtz, Inner Game Group. Tim is on standby, but his internet's out. So hopefully that comes on and he can join us. But we have a great one today. Dr. Paul Conti, very well-known psychologist. He's a psychologist for several celebrities, including Lady Gaga. There's a list of other ones, published author. And he, I know that we talk a lot about childhood trauma, the subconscious, all of that, but he's going to go into maybe, not just maybe, but some of the ways it actually affects us as adults. And most people don't realize how things that happen in their childhood affects them now. And a lot of people think that, oh, it's only, maybe 10 or 20% of people or 30% who struggle with subconscious trauma from their childhood or anything else. Most people are normal. Most people are okay. Well, that's not the case at all. It's actually a bell curve. There's a few people that are emotionally healthy. There's a few people that are extremely or severely psychologically wounded. And then there's a bunch of people in between who are moderately psychologically wounded, whose trauma is moderately affecting them, but affecting them every day of their life until the day they die. If you get rid of that, how much better off are you going to be? Well, I know from experience, you're going to be way better off. But Dr. Conti is going to help us connect the dots and see, people who just, you think you're procrastination, or maybe you eat a little too much sugar, drink a little too much alcohol, things like that, or, even more serious addictions, all tied to childhood trauma. So we're going to explore that today and then talk about how you can fix that, because we do it all the time. Before we get into that, Jordan, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself, my man.
Thanks, Ryan. Jordan Kurtz with Jordan Kurtz Hypnosis. I help you find your limiting beliefs and remove them and replace them with positive, healthy ones, and amplify the good beliefs that are already inside of you. And spoiler alert, you are good enough, and we help you understand that to be true, and we amplify that feeling. And I like the clip today because he talks about, this is really just bread and butter for us. I like seeing I like seeing more and more people start to say the things that we say. So it's not just, we're not just in an echo chamber, a vacuum. It's like, no, there are other mainstream psychologists who are aware of the same kinds of issues that we talk about. And so it's nice to see that more, especially on large platforms. Like this clip is from Diary of a CEO. And so it's nice that these ideas are starting to get more and more to a broader audience, certainly. At least a younger audience, certainly. I think Diary of a CEO is, what do you think the target?
6.5 million subs about. So
what do you think the target demographic is for him?
Well, with 6.5 million subs, I'd say a little of everything, all age groups. Probably more men, just because more men watch YouTube. Yeah, but with that said, I'd say a little bit of everything. Then that's why he has so many subscribers, a broad demographic. So we're going to dive into this clip. By the way, we are not psychologists. We are hypnotists. We do sessions. We use super neuroplasticity to find this subconscious trauma in your brain, quickly rewire it. Oftentimes one session, sometimes more, but oftentimes just one session, rewire the trauma, get it out of you, put it in with optimal subconscious beliefs. We're available for sessions, but there is also a free program where you can try super neuroplasticity for yourself. I've had people tell me, 10 out of 10 depression or 9 out of 10 procrastination, anxiety, fixing it for free with our free program. A guided session, of course, is going to get you better results, but you can try out the free stuff right there. There's also an ebook on how our subconscious mind works and why it keeps you stuck. You can get that there, school.com/MindChrysalis-7138. But let's go ahead and dive into this Dr. Conti clip, because it has some really good stuff in that I definitely want to comment on. And he is one of the more well-informed psychologist for sure. He doesn't know neuroplasticity, which is a shame. But that's why we have a show. We're trying to bring it to the world because you can actually rewire your brain much more deeply and rapidly than conventional techniques. And the research is out there that you can do this, but it has not. The scientific research, my 4-part series on super neuroplasticity in the video section of my YouTube channel goes over Dr. Huberman, Dr. Gabor Mate, other studies, what's said, but practitioners aren't using it yet. So we're trying to bring that to the world. But here is Dr. Conti, a lot of good information here. And let's go ahead and dive in.
Symptoms of trauma. We've talked about some of the big picture stuff, which is like suicidality, becoming an alcoholic, or all those kinds of things. But the subtle ways that trauma sizing over are things like phone addiction, being addicted to your phone, or video game addictions. These kind of things that I think maybe originate from the sort of more chronic traumas, but are less easy to spot.
Right. Yeah, I think the key to all of this is curiosity, right? So let's say someone is, like, say, addicted to their phone. Okay, maybe that's because phones are addictive and the person just spent too much time on their phone, maybe, right? But addiction mechanisms in human beings are similar. Like, it's the same machinery across addictions. Right? And oftentimes addictive behavior is meant as an escape from something, or to soothe against something, or even to self-punish because of something. So addictive behaviors, it's similar brain machinery, whether it's cocaine, it's alcohol, it's brownies, it's the telephone, it's sex, it's exercise. I mean, there are things that people do in addictive ways as routes of unhealthy coping. So if we get curious, why the drug, why the phone addiction, why the things that might seem more subtle, and maybe are more subtle, but we should scratch on the surface of them to try and understand if they mean something. Is that phone addiction the 14th addictive behavior in a row, right? Because that person has sort of particularly adept addictive machinery inside of them and they're trying to escape from something? Like, that doesn't happen all the time, but it is not untrue that when you scratch the surface of that, you might learn about an episode of sexual abuse that happened when the person was a child. Like, these are real examples, right? And that the person isn't built to run from things through addiction. And maybe there's
pause there.
Yeah, I got something to say too. I'll let you go first.
I told you this was dense. This is well, I mean, we've said it before, we move towards pain, or away from pain, and towards pleasure.
And that's what coping mechanisms are all about, avoiding that pain or covering it. Yeah.
Gabor Mate said this too. Addictions are trying to soothe something, move away from pain, And what are typically people trying to move away from? Their subconscious beliefs. Toxic shame is one of the most painful things we can feel. And so I feel like I don't have a lot to add, because I actually think he breaks it down really nicely. But I feel like he could, if you want to come on the show, if he wants to come on the show, he's welcome.
Hey, yeah.
He'd be a good, he'd be a good guest. That's all I
got. So the thing here is, we both do lots and lots of sessions for clients, and it's often surprising to the client. We will go back to their childhood. We'll find out their subconscious beliefs tied to painful feelings that are the root cause of these coping mechanisms, are trying to avoid that pain from getting triggered. And how our subconscious mind works is we have beliefs learned in childhood. Things happen to us. We interpret what it means. We form beliefs, and subconscious trauma are these maladaptive beliefs that don't serve us, tied to painful feelings. And what happens as adults, we go through the world, if there's any time there's something in the outside world, a match for the belief, it spikes that painful feeling. So then what we do, we don't want to feel that pain. Our brain doesn't want us to feel that pain, even though it's in us, tied to that childhood belief that is still in us now, subconscious program. And so our brain then says, the pain's there. It gets triggered. The brain says, I don't want to feel this pain consciously. So that's where addictions come in. And it could be as simple as addicted to social media. It can be a mild addiction. Hey, Nigel, welcome to the show, my man. It could be a mild addiction. It could be scrolling through your phone, wasting time. It can be procrastination because pain is tied to doing certain things, or fear of pain, a belief there could be pain there. Hey, if I don't do this, I'm a loser. That can actually cause you to avoid it, because all our brain sees is potential for pain and makes you avoid. Fight or flight, it's flight. It could be, if I do this and make a mistake, I'll be embarrassed. Other people will see it. I feel like a loser. That's no good. So you avoid it because of that. And people are like, hey, why do I procrastinate? Hey, why do I eat too much ice cream and sweets? Or, this, that, the other, whatever. And then we dive in and find out XYZ from their childhood. And they say, I had no idea. I don't even remember that thing happening until now. But now, yeah, that did happen. I do remember. And we don't plant, we're not leading them on. We don't plant memories. They come up with the memories. So we're not doing anything like that, just so you guys know. We resolve it, and all of a sudden, one session, boom, even with the free program right there. I mean, I have testimonials, video interviews on this channel in the video section. Watch Super Neuroplasticity Part 3. There's a guy, Nathan. He used our free program. He was procrastinating 9 out of 10. There's stuff that would take him half an hour to do, not hard, and he would put it off for several weeks before he finally did it. He does one session, goes back to his childhood, finds that painful belief, and gets rid of it. One session, and now his procrastination permanently down 75% after just going through some worksheets, writing stuff out, listening to an audio, and it's 75% better permanently. It's crazy. But that's how it works. This guy has all the pieces of the puzzle except for the ability to make the quick, rapid, permanent, deep change like that. He has everything else, and he can help people slowly over time. He can help them significantly over time, but he doesn't have that final piece that just would make him 20 to 50 times more effective. It's unfortunate, but hey, it is what it is. So we'll keep going. But all that... If our audience think about how you struggle, think about what you can't stop doing, what mild or moderate or maybe severe addictions you have, or procrastination or self-doubt, insecurities, etc. That is all tied to childhood trauma. It can all be fixed. We'll keep going. And a lot of it can be rapidly fixed.
Their own character that's negative. They're saying negative things about themselves, and they feel disempowered, and they're disempowering themselves. But if you go look at that narrative, that person that might have a dialogue running over and over again in their head of shame about something that happened 30, 40 years ago, like, this is not uncommon. So we need to be curious, and we need to scratch on the surface of things, whether they're...
Right.
Okay.
I think we have another word for that narrative or dialogue. We happen to call those subconscious programs.
Yeah. And he's going to talk about them now. And this is very important stuff for our audience. So anything else?
No, it says I like it when people describe the same exact things that we do, just with different words, because it's like, no, we are crazy. It really is real. So.
Yeah, the best practitioners know everything except for the 5 requirements you must meet to almost instantly and permanently and deeply rewire your brain. They don't know the 5 requirements, plus either psychedelics or plus state change, hypnosis or psychedelics. We don't do psychedelics, but you can do this through psychedelics. There's 5 requirements. The research shows that. Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about this. I picked apart what he said, broke it down, analyzed it in my video series, on 4-part series on super neuroplasticity. The research, it's there. The practitioners aren't using it, but they know they're using everything but that. It's hopefully they'll catch up and figure it out. Okay, we'll keep going. Go ahead.
I just said they're so close. They're so close.
Yeah, they're so close, but they just don't have the breakthrough, even though the researchers have the data and it's been published. Yeah. But the practitioners have not yet started using it. It's strange but true.
Really big things, or they're subtle things, which is why a life narrative is so important. If you think about changes like after trauma that changes the brain, we respond differently when we see a new face. So without the trauma, I'm simplifying a little bit, but you see a new face, we might be curious, like, oh, could you be a friend? Or if someone's romantically interested, like, oh, might that person like me? Or I might them. Like, people are interested and curious. Whereas after trauma, there's a difference of feeling a little bit on the back foot. So people tend less to look up and engage and more to look away or to more have negative thoughts. So that person doesn't like me, instead of something that might be more constructive.
How do they test for this? Is there tests that are able to be done to see if someone after trauma has like a different set of sunglasses that they view the world with?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. There's tests from the brain biology all the way through to very clever psychological experiments. Like, we can see all of this, and it's these signs we should be looking for in ourselves, right? Because it is very obvious if someone who always was an extrovert now won't leave the house, right? Like, we can tell something's wrong and someone's probably going to come ask something, right? But if we just change in these more subtle ways where we're just less interactive and, people notice their friends a little bit different and less outgoing, it's these things that, as you're saying, the subtle ones, the subtle signs and the nuances are often very impactful and indicative of other things going on under the surface, that can bring even greater problems.
On this subject of soothing that you were talking about a second ago, there's this quote that you say in your book.
Pause.
Right. Yeah, I have a comment on that.
I said we weren't going to get very far through this.
Well, I'll go first, then I'll let you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here's the thing. We see this sometimes. He's talking about someone who's extroverted, outgoing. Some trauma happens as an adult, and all of a sudden there's a big change. And you may ask yourself, well, how does childhood trauma play in? Isn't it the trauma as an adult, and all of a sudden, this person is changed? Isn't it that trauma? But what we find, so for example, this happens in war, a lot of combat vets. What the psychologists have found is the combat vets who get PTSD much worse than others had a lot more childhood trauma. And so the interesting thing about our subconscious mind is a lot of this stuff does get buried, or we find coping mechanisms, addictions, and a lot of the addiction could be watching TV. It could be a mild or moderate addiction, and that's enough. But what happens, I go back to, as adults, we go through the world. If there's something in the outside world that is a match for a belief in us, it spikes the trigger tied to that belief. And when there can one event or several of really big trauma as an adult, it can take that original trauma and magnify it and kind of keep it like now it's permanently triggered, or now it's magnified. But if you didn't have that childhood trauma in the first place, you get over the adult trauma. I don't know if you remember, Jordan, but maybe a month or two ago, probably 2 months ago, there was someone talking about adult trauma, and he didn't mention the childhood at all. This guy was a psychologist. Like, he even said he didn't have expertise in childhood trauma, which is like, what the hell? Why don't you? That's extremely important. But what he mentioned is most adults they'll have trauma, they will struggle for a while, and then they'll recover and go back to normal. Well, those are adults where the trauma as an adult, there's no underlying childhood trauma. But if you have underlying childhood trauma that gets magnified by that adult trauma, these are people who don't recover as adults. They're permanently like really screwed up now. If that original childhood trauma wasn't there, even if it's a big trauma as an adult, they would eventually go back to normal or almost normal. So childhood trauma can remain dormant in you and then get triggered by a big trauma as an adult and cause some really adverse effects that otherwise wouldn't be caused by that adult trauma. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I've seen that with my clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that ties into what he's talking about here. So just want our audience to understand that. And you have something as well.
Yeah. So that's why some of these things can be, if you're not looking for them, sometimes these can be hard to detect, because what happens, the subtle signs of this person just becomes a little bit less outgoing. This person becomes a little bit less, their personality shifts a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
because like the big swings are really easy to see, right? If someone immediately goes from being extroverted to introverted, not, you know, and like huge
shut down
shifts,
or
we
whatever,
can
yeah.
notice that. And it's a lot harder to see sometimes the more subtle things, even for ourselves. And if you're not good like this, I think it's a skill to look at yourself and be able to understand, like, how am I feeling and why am I feeling this way? And so if you're being affected by subtle, like smaller subconscious programs, you may not recognize that there's actually an underlying issue going on. And like if you're struggling with like major depression and anxiety and all these things, like those are really easy to detect. But sometimes the smaller things are why people. It's like that analogy of the dog that's sitting on the nail, and people just ask, well, why doesn't the dog move? Well, it's like because he's not in enough pain. It's like people will sit in sort of just not quite just torturous pain for years, but like just moderate amount of anxiety and moderate amount of, you know, stress and moderate amount of like shame, because it's not bad enough and they're still functional, but they're not optimized. And what we want to do, we're here for everybody. We're here for the person who's struggling with, you know, huge amounts of toxic shame and anxiety, and the person who struggles like with a moderate amount. Like no matter what the amount, no matter how much, you know, toxic shame you have, you still deserve, you're still entitled to clear your mind and, you know, and heal yourself. There's no, like, just because somebody had it worse does not mean that all of you are not entitled to heal yourself. So
yeah, and even if it's only a moderate struggle, but if it's in your subconscious, it's coming up over and over and over again, and you can manage it, you can deal with it. It's not severe, it's moderate. Wouldn't it be great if that was just permanently gone and permanently replaced with a good program that does empower you, that does serve you? I think what you're talking about dovetails into people who keep getting into bad relationships.
Yep.
And they seem to be doing okay with life, but they keep on getting with a toxic woman or a woman getting with a toxic guy over and over and over. And then they're super outward directed on this person who's toxic, and they never, well, I mean, a few of them will, but most people who keep getting into bad relationships never take the time to pause and say, why do I keep choosing these scumbags or these BPD women who are crazy, you know, or, you know, guys or girls? It goes either way. I've seen it both. And so they're focused, this rotten person, or they'll say all men are pigs, or all women are like, you know, all women are like that. All women are toxic and they just want you for your money and they're just using and abusing and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the truth is, if a person has that worldview, number one, that's projection. That's parts of your subconscious you don't want to acknowledge or not aware of. And it's distorting the lens through which you view the world. And so it's having you say, all, you know, all men or all women are like this or whatever. And then an emotionally healthy person will be interested in them and they find that person boring and just skate right by that person when they could have had a really good relationship with that person. But what is going on is this toxic person reminds you of your mom or your dad, for example, like on a subconscious level you're not even aware of. Well, why do you go after that person? Well, because all children idealize their parents growing up. We all, when we're little babies, we understand we cannot survive without our parents. We instinctively know that. And so we instinctively choose to believe our mom and dad are wise, powerful, benevolent, strong, ideal. Because if they are, then they're able to take care of us. We feel safe. Okay, I have these two rock stars, these two awesome people able to take care of me. I'm going to survive. So your mom and dad go into the ideal person template. And then you meet, but if they have trauma and they traumatize you and they're toxic, then as an adult, you meet a toxic person and they're no good for you. They're toxic. They're abusive. But your brain is like, oh, that's like my mom and dad. I'm going to put them in the ideal person category and marry that person. And then you wonder, and now you're focused on how horrible they are to you, not understanding that the reason you chose them in the first place was because of your childhood trauma that is tied to one or both of your parents. And we see it over and over and over again. And you see these people get out of one bad relationship and then get right back into, and just, you know, you see people married like 6-7 times. You know, they just keep repeating the pattern until you go inward. You get the awareness of what's really going on, and then you change that program, and then all of a sudden now you're getting with emotionally healthy people, and we've seen that too.
Yeah.
So, okay, so
I like this camera shot too. By the way, that I like the frames us both really nicely. Anyway,
oh, this guy here.
Yeah, I like that. I like the. Wonder if we could figure out a way to do that with 3 people. But,
good question.
But anyway,
right.
For next time, perhaps.
Onward and upwards.
Onward.
Here we go.
Trauma promotes pain, pain increases suffering, and suffering makes us desperate to soothe our pain, whatever form it takes. Sadly, we're seeing the terrible cycle play out on a lot.
I'm going to play that just one more time because this is super important for our audience.
You say in your book, trauma promotes pain, pain increases suffering, and suffering makes us desperate to soothe our pain, whatever form it takes. Sad.
That right there
Trauma
probably explains
pain.
About 80% of maladaptive human behavior.
So can we say
what's
say that slow? Like, can we repeat that slower? So trauma promotes pain, pain promotes suffering, and what was the next one?
Suffering, it makes us want to cover pain. Here, I'll play it at 3/4 speed.
Yeah, he says it pretty quick. There's a lot.
This is super important, guys.
Sadly, we're desperate to trauma promotes pain that you were talking about a second ago. There's this quote that you say in your book, trauma promotes pain, pain increases suffering, and suffering makes us desperate to soothe our pain, whatever form it takes. Sadly, we're seeing the terrible cycle play.
Okay, so that right there explains addiction, procrastination, staying small, playing it safe, living a mediocre life, not living the life you really want, putting a mask on so that you're accepted by others, so you can't be the real authentic you. Mm-hmm. You're being someone you're being someone other than your authentic self to avoid rejection from others. Validation seeking, people pleasing, all the anxiety you have, which is your brain saying, here, if you do this and it goes wrong, this painful emotion and you will get triggered. I don't want you to feel that. So I'm giving you anxiety, and the anxiety makes you just avoid it. Avoidant attachment styles, anxious attachment styles, anxious avoidant. I could frickin' go on. All of that is explained by what he just read. Yeah. And it can be fixed. And I have people I've had people, I do some sessions for them. We get rid of their trauma, their limiting beliefs, and literally 10x their income. I've had 2 people 10x. I've had several people 3x. Over a dozen people 2x their income because they got rid of this crap that was holding them back. I've had people go from 200 salespeople, they're on the bottom, and they go to number 7 after one session because now they're not holding back to avoid pain. Go ahead, Jordan.
So, okay, so I want to walk. So trauma promotes pain, pain promotes suffering, suffering causes you to engage in behaviors which cover that up. So I
cover it or avoid it.
And let's be clear. Let's be clear on what the pain is. The pain is typically, it's those, 5 to the 5. It's those 5 things. It's I'm not good enough for other people, not good enough to get what I want, anger, resentment, and I don't feel safe. That's what the trauma causes, and specifically it's the subconscious program of one of, if not more than one of those 5 things.
Yeah.
That leads you to suffer because those are painful things to feel, and people don't like to feel suffering, so they engage in behaviors which either cover up or avoid those feelings altogether.
And toxic shame is a bigger problem, is the biggest problem of all. There are some people who constantly feel unsafe, but a much larger portion of our population is struggling because of toxic shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to think. That was only
Sorry,
like
I interrupted you.
We can keep going, but no,
Okay.
there's a lot of good stuff here. So let's break it down.
Yeah, and so the reason we played this 3 times and paused and we're commenting on it is because an absolutely massive amount of maladaptive, painful human behavior, things we're doing, and it's like, why can't I lose the weight? This, that, the other. Why don't I go to the gym more? I start and then I stop, and I why do I self-sabotage? All this other crap.
Yeah.
He just explained the root cause for a massive, like most maladaptive human behavior. He just explained the root cause for. We'll keep going. And I'm not exaggerating. I am not exaggerating at all. Here we go.
Play out on a larger societal level with the opiate epidemic.
Yes.
This idea of soothing, we will find ways to soothe ourselves. And some of those ways that we find to soothe ourselves become destructive in and of themselves. And it almost makes me think that like sometimes our attempt, we think of like alcoholism typically as people that are self-destructing. But when you understand the soothing component of drinking alcohol, it actually is them trying to not self-destruct, not destroy themselves, but to take care of themselves.
Right.
In a weird way.
If we're under huge amounts of distress, our perspective of the world narrows, right? Very, very dramatically. I mean, if there's an elephant standing on my foot, I only have one thing I'm guessing I would think about, which is the elephant not standing on my foot anymore, right? So when we're under tremendous stress and strain, right, something that soothes us in the short term, right, becomes acceptable because there's a desperation in us that has us focused on the short term. Like I know that's not good in the long term, but I'm just trying to get through today, right? And it's this lack of perspective in the world and the society around us that if we're not recognizing what trauma does to us, that it can drive us to places of desperation, that is it any wonder that short-term soothing will have a big appeal to us? And that could be soothing through excess eating. And now, that person is overweight and has diabetes and wants to be healthier, but like doesn't really feel that they can stop, and ping pongs back on different diets. And, what they're really doing is they learned self-soothing with food in a way that was, in the context of really feeling some sense of despair or desperation, the same way that person may have learned that, alcohol soothes. Now, again, there are genetic factors and there are all sorts of factors that come into play too, but unhealthy coping mechanisms are beckoning to us all the time, which is why, I did a lot of treatment of opiates and opiate dependence over a number of years. And, it's just outrageous to me that these are the most powerful psychoactive medicines on earth, right? Opiates, like they soothe psychic distress, like, feeling not good mentally inside of us very, very rapidly and effectively.
You almost said it.
Immediately start building.
You almost said what?
You almost said not good.
Not good enough. I think he says it at some point. I'm not sure.
One more word. But I really don't have any. I mean, he's explaining it so beautifully. I really don't have really too many other comments. I mean, it's just we've said it many times. I think that avoid pain towards pleasure. Towards pleasure is soothing things. Don't want to feel this pain. I want to soothe myself. I mean, it's not that when you break it down like that, it's not really that complicated. Move towards pleasure, move away from pain. And when you see it through that lens,
stronger desire, avoid the pain. That's a stronger desire. Unless that pleasure covers pain, then we'll move to the pleasure to cover the pain. To soothe.
And I like the analogy of like, it's the elephant standing on my foot. It's like, if I'm doing a live stream, there's, and suddenly something falls on me, I'm probably going to get distracted. I'm going to focus on the most immediate threat in front of me. But what happens when that threat is in your subconscious and that threat is really a feeling of I'm not good enough? That's the most immediate threat right in front of you. You just can't see it, but you feel it. And so I like that. I like him putting it that way, because you're like, yeah, I do get it, because that's the most. It's like right in front of you. It's like you can't. It's unavoidable. So you have to, do something that makes you not feel that way.
Yeah. Okay. So, one thing I want to highlight to you guys is there is a perceived threat that many men struggle with, that we just finished all the filming and editing. We have a product coming out that'll help men with this, and that is approach anxiety and dating anxiety, sexualizing an interaction with women. I don't mean you tell them, hey, you want to have sex. I mean, you're just flirting with them. You're putting it in that sexual context. If I'm interested in you, I think you're, an attractive, spicy girl, and a lot of guys are terrified of that. Being in the friend zone is always optional, because you can always tell the girl, I think you're a really attractive, desirable girl. I want to date you. And if she says no, say, okay, see you later. But usually guys who get friend zoned, what's happening
full
with
screen for this?
Yeah. Usually, thank you.
Yeah.
Usually what's happening is friend zone guys don't even flirt, don't even sexualize, don't even, just kind of lay it out there that, hey, let's go on a date. I'm pursuing you. You're desirable. So they stay in the friend zone. That's usually what happens. Or you see an attractive girl across the room, or in your college class, or at church, or just wherever, and she may even like look over at you and smile a little, or get a double take or whatever, show a little bit of interest, and you don't approach. And if you think about approaching, you feel anxiety. If you really start to approach, then the anxiety spikes up to 9 out of 10. That all ties into, hey, if she rejects me, I'm going to feel toxic shame. I'm going to feel like a loser. So it's not just addiction soothing stuff, but it is our anxiety that says, don't go there, because if it goes wrong, you're going to feel terrible. And so I don't want you to feel bad. Well, that bad feeling comes from a subconscious program that can be rewired. And so we have a little commercial we're going to show.
Is this the first time you've done this commercial?
This is first time, baby. So we are going to, and man, I hope I do this correctly. Let's see here.
You can do it. You can do it.
All right. So I'm going to show you, this product is coming out probably in about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. And so this is just, and by the way, we've had guys all the time, 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 approach anxiety, one session down to 2 or 3 out of 10. In fact, there are several videos in the video section, like the Ryan Apollo video, for example. Jorge Diaz, his interview talks about that. There's another guy, it's just an audio only. He's a sales guy, went from bottom of the barrel out of 200 to number 7. He had approach anxiety too. He talks about how he overcame that. We actually help guys with this all the freaking time. But now we have a program that comes with group training. And I'm going to show you the little commercial that our good friend Paul Bauer of Come On Man podcast was nice enough to make for us. So let's.
Yeah, shout out to Paul.
Yeah. Oh, wait, why am I not share screen? All right. So this is the world premiere.
If I haven't even seen this.
Yeah, I don't think you've seen this yet. Oops.
I have not.
All right. There's behind the scenes. Here we go.
Unlisted on YouTube.
Oh, hold on. All right, let's try that again. Now we're going to share this one.
All right.
All right, here we go. There we go. All right, this is the guy.
Imagine approaching women with confidence and ease, free from fear and self-doubt. Anxiety can sabotage your chances for meaningful connections. It holds you back from expressing your true self and enjoying fulfilling relationships. Isn't it frustrating to miss out on opportunities because of fear? Anxiety about rejection or not being enough can keep you stuck in a cycle of loneliness and missed chances. Discover the Approach Anxiety and Confidence with Women course, where science meets personal transformation.
It just feels so great. I don't know what the way to describe it.
Start your journey towards a fearless future, where every interaction with women feels empowering and natural. Imagine approaching women with...
All right. So that is coming shortly. It's going to be, now we're going to do webinars twice a month. Through the end of the year, you have access to. Plus, it's going to be about 3 hours of video training and 4 self-hypnosis audios. And it is designed to, yes, you have to take it seriously. You have to do the worksheets and exercises. But for many people, you listen to the audios 1, 2, 3 times, and you're going to notice your approach anxiety goes down to maybe 2, 3 out of 10. We can't get rid of it all because we actually have some instinct to be a little cautious when you see a new woman. And that goes all the way back to ancient tribal times. 25% of men were killed, murdered over women and resources. In intertribal warfare, it was usually one tribe killing the other tribe. So we have a little bit of just instinct, 2 out of 10 anxiety, 3 out of 10. Anything higher than that, we can get down to that baseline, 2 or 3, even 1 out of 10 anxiety. Now it's low. Now it's very manageable. And you start going for it. And if the woman rejects you, you're still good enough. Hey, if a woman doesn't see my value, doesn't mean I don't have value. I do have value. It just means she can't see it. That's her blindness. That's her problem. We literally plant that in your core where you feel that at a deep core level. So that's coming. If you want to get on the waiting list, just join the school.com MindChrysalis right there, because we will keep you updated there about that coming out. It's going to be somewhere between $300 and $400 for now. It's a year from now, it's going to be higher, but that's coming. So keep an eye out for it, guys. And so let's go back to the Paul Conti video and we will finish it out, but really good stuff here.
Sounds good.
Man, if this guy had super neuroplasticity, he already has access to a bunch of celebrities. You would see like, all of a sudden you would see like hundreds of celebrities suddenly becoming emotionally healthy.
Yep.
It would probably revolutionize Hollywood. But anyways, you know, it's all good. We don't have the connections he has. Not yet. We'll see.
Very well.
Danger, right? But I had no education and training around opiates as psychoactive medicines. So here we are in a society that is underappreciating trauma and where people are at in a sense of isolation or otherness or desperation in so many facets of our society. And then we start handing them the most powerful short-term soothing mechanism with the absolute highest risk of long-term danger and death. And then we're surprised that how many tens of thousands of people die each year from prescribed opiates.
What kind of a...
So that is people covering up their pain. Just remove it. Just get it out of you. Get out of your core so it's not there anymore. That's what we do. And if the world knew about this, these hundreds of thousands of deaths, almost all of those would have been avoided because they wouldn't need the drug to cover their pain.
People being prescribed.
And it's like, real quick. I know I keep pausing. And that's why people are like, well, we gotta restrict opiates. It's like you're missing the point.
You gotta
like,
cure the root cause that makes people addicted to it.
Oh, we can't say cure because we're not medical, whatever. But
yeah, we're not medical professionals, but Dr. Conti can cure it using our methods.
That's true. But because that's the whole point. If you don't address the root cause, it's just gonna, if it's not opiates, it'll be something else. That's the thing. It's like you just shift the problem to somewhere else, whether it be porn, alcohol, exercise, sex, whatever. It just shifts. Opiates just happen to be at the top of the list for soothing. Then
they're so good at it, and that's why they're so addictive.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a short-term fix and has massive long-term problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it really began was with opiates in pill form. So that they would be prescribed, say, for conditions of pain, but conditions of pain that were more chronic conditions or conditions not so amenable to opiates. So if you come out of surgery, an opiate is a great idea, right? Like there's a lot of pain that needs medicine to soothe that pain until the pain decreases. But it's judicious use of a very powerful medicine in high acuity circumstances. What we started trying to do, and part of this was, we know there's a whole story behind the politics and the business of this, was to say, well, people shouldn't be in pain. So there's a short-term solution, right? No one should be in pain. We'll give them pills, right? And opiates do not work in those situations. They soothe a lot early on, but they rapidly build tolerance, addiction. They suppress breathing drive. So we started doling out opiate pills with the idea that we're treating pain and isn't that good, but with an absolute inattention to the immense risks of that. And I think it fits with the short-term view of relieving all pain. Like, we're human beings. We can't relieve all of our pain, right? Sometimes what there is to do is to work hard to mitigate pain. And that might be pain, from a mental health perspective, it might be pain from a physical health perspective. But this idea that a pill is going to fix everything, and now everyone has pain pills and won't be in pain, has resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths in this country alone from prescribed opiates, let alone illicit opiates. So there's the short-term thinking on the part of our society that then almost lures people into the seduction of the short-term soothing, right? You feel miserable and you want things to be better, take this pill. Now you're seduced and addicted and at huge risk. And, we've let that happen.
For us to know how to treat trauma, we have to understand the physiological consequences of it. How does trauma change our brain? When we look at brain scans, what do we see in a traumatized person?
One thing I'll interject before he goes on, one of our earlier shows, probably about a year ago, it looked at a doctor who was at a clinic, or he was the head of a clinic, and they did a study. I think they surveyed 17,000 people, or a large number of people, and they had 11 types of trauma, such as you have a parent in jail, you have a parent not there, you're physically abused, you have a parent who's an addict, severe bullying. So they had this 11-point list, and they found out that 1 out of, I think, 9 or 11 people had at least half the things on the list, and those people's life expectancy was 20 years shorter than normal from severe childhood trauma. It's crazy, but that's one thing they don't mention here. It will literally can make you live 20 years shorter with very severe childhood trauma.
I want to be clear. It's not the pills themselves that are addictive. It's the feeling, it's the relief from the feeling of pain that's addictive, and the pill is facilitating that. And so,
our brain's super strong drive is avoid or cover or mitigate that pain. It's the strongest drive we have. It's tied to survival.
And when I had a septoplasty in my nose, and I was prescribed, I don't know, oxys or something like that. This is opiates. I can't remember. I don't know. I'm not medical.
Yeah, oxy is an opiate.
Yeah, oxycodone. And I was kept told, was like, you can't take too many because they're addictive. It's like, well, they're addictive because you're trying to avoid. It's not the pills themselves that are addictive. It's the avoiding pain feeling. And so I didn't become addicted to the pills, when after my surgery, I had a certain amount, and then eventually my nose felt better. But it's it's only if the addiction comes from wanting to repeat the feeling of avoiding pain and soothing yourself. So a healthy person who doesn't feel these things can take opiates, and they're not going to become addicted to them because they're not using the opiate they're not using it repeatedly because they don't have to repeatedly mask the feeling of pain. It's like the study they did with rats.
It's the same thing with smoking and alcohol. Some people drink alcohol and they just manage it. They have a couple drinks a week. They're good. Other people raging alcoholics. Same thing with smoking. They actually did studies. Some people smoke and it's all right.
Right.
But they don't become addicted. Same thing with heroin. In the Vietnam War, they did these studies of people who came back from Vietnam. A lot of soldiers took heroin Why? Because it's readily available. Came home, never touched it again. And then other people, become these homeless, ex-war veterans, heroin addicts. Why do some people can't become alcoholics and others don't? Same thing with other addictions. Some people watch TV, they watch an hour a day or a couple hours a week, and they're like, I'm good. And others just watch it all the time. Same thing with social media. Why? Because the people who become addicts are predisposed to that because they have this internal pain that activity mitigates. So they just come back again and again and again because above all, our brain needs us to mitigate that pain, cope.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We can make it. We're doing good.
Let's go. We'll go to, we'll go to the end. We're almost there.
Yeah.
Brain scan data is more complicated and harder to interpret. You can see different patterns in the brain. We're not at the point where brain scan science can pinpoint, right? But what we do see is parts of the brain that are sort of inflamed, so to speak, by trauma. So the amygdala and pathways around the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that gets called sometimes grand central station for negative emotion, right? We see that pathways involving this part of the brain become more prominent, right? So we see changes in brain connectivity, because how our brains function is by communicating from one place to another. They function through connectivity, and which pathways are more prominent. So what we see then is pathways that are involved in trust, say, and feeling a sense of safety are less prominent. Pathways that are more activated when we feel less safe and more vigilant are more activated. And then we see the climate, so to speak, in the brain change in a way that's less healthy. And you may also see specific aspects of a post-trauma syndrome. So mood regulation areas are not functioning as well because now there's depression intruding. So we see patterns in the brain that show us this change, although the science hasn't come far enough to pinpoint, like at some point we'll be able to do with much greater accuracy.
And I've heard you talk about how that creates cognitive blind spots. So blind spots in our brain following a traumatic event. What do you mean by cognitive blind spots, and what's the harm or risk of that?
Right. So a cognitive blind spot can occur when we take a lesson inside of us that is a lesson of trauma, not a lesson of truth. And then it changes how we may think about things. So for example, a real and sadly many examples of this that I can bring to mind in people's faces who come to mind as I say it, but someone who felt pretty good about themselves and able to navigate the world and striving for a better job and doing fun things, who then is assaulted. Right? And after that assault, the person is much less present in the world and internalizes a bunch of different thoughts about themselves of, I don't really like being out. I like being at home better, or it never goes well. I don't get along with other people.
Safe.
Like they think about themselves differently.
Yeah, I don't feel safe. Yeah.
So there's a cognitive blind spot, which makes it very, very difficult to think with accuracy about, say, possibilities. So that person may have, say, been striving for a better job, right? But if they think of themselves differently, I'm not the kind of person who can get ahead and people don't really like me, then they don't strive for a better job. They just take for granted.
Yeah, I can't get what I want. I'm, for whatever reason, I'm not allowed. I don't have the power. I'm too inadequate. I get it, but I always lose it. No matter how hard I try, I won't get it. So why even try? And those people can become very apathetic and shut down. Yeah, many reasons.
That
those are all subconscious beliefs.
They can't get it. It won't go well. They'll fail at it. But they never thought that before.
Is this what you kind of see when people refer to someone having daddy issues? And I was thinking as you were saying that my dad left. So say my dad left when I was 4,
mm-hmm.
and I internalized this idea that men don't love me, for example.
Right.
And then I go through life being an avoidant person in romantic situations, or self-sabotaging, or going for people that are unavailable to avoid the rejection.
Right.
Is that somewhat similar? Like I've created a cognitive blind spot and now I'm living out that as an instruction manual for my life.
Yes, absolutely yes. And the earlier in life, the more powerful the lesson is. And the brain doesn't go back and revisit those lessons. So I think this is just so amazing and surprising to me that our brains are so incredibly complex, right? More complex than the greatest supercomputer, right? Yet our brain.
The most complicated known object in the universe is the human brain, and that's a fact. Scientists tell you that.
Brains don't do some very basic things. Like we don't reboot and see, is there a patch or is there something to fix, right? We don't go back and look at these earlier lessons. So if you learn at age 4.
There was a way to do that.
Yeah, well, he kind of talks about how you can do it, but this is the core of what we do. Our brain does not automatically reboot on its own, but there are ways to reboot your brain and get rid of those bad beliefs forever. And that is the most effective, rapidest way by far is super neural plasticity. That is what we do. You can also do it through certain psychedelics, preferably like a guided psychedelic session. Again, we don't do any of that. There are issues. You can have bad trips. A few of the psychedelics, such as ketamine, are addictive. Most are not, but a few are. There are issues, but there are people, for example, who had major depressive disorder, and they did psilocybin a couple times, and it cured their major depressive disorder. That's documented. So, unfortunately, psilocybin is illegal in 48 states. Ketamine's legal, and it can be helpful, but it can be addictive. So, it's one route, but there's issues there. Or you can just listen to an audio in the privacy of your own home and fix it for many people. Or one-on-one session, which is even more effective.
We need one of those sound effects panels, and one of the buttons needs to be the Windows reboot sound.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that we need to add that to the show. We need to take
he actually does help people reboot, but he's using a type of CBT or one of these other therapies that focuses, on your conscious mind interfacing with your subconscious instead of working directly on the subconscious. And that can rewire slowly over a long period of time. I used to have very bad manic depression, CPTSD, internalized rage, general anxiety disorder. And I went to 100 normal sessions over 15 years. It fixed about 60% of the depression. Didn't really touch anything else. A little bit of the anger went down, but not a lot. That's about it. That was 100 sessions over 15 years. So cognitive techniques can rewire your brain through repetition slowly over time, but it's just so freaking inefficient. But we'll listen to him keep going. I'm sure this guy is more effective than the therapist I had, but he's still not using, the instant rewire, boom, one shot. The Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. David Spiegel, both Stanford University professors, tell you the research says you can do. And Dr. Spiegel, who does hypnosis, uses superneuroplasticity all the time for his clients and fixes them very quickly. And Stanford University is usually ranked between number 1 and number 3 top psychology universities in the world. And the guy who's the chair of the psychiatry department is a hypnotist. And that's what we do. I don't know why the number 1 university in the world, number 1 to 3, depending on who's rating it, has a chair who's a hypnotist, and this is not in mainstream practice. What the hell? It doesn't make sense to me. It does, I guess mainstream just hasn't caught up with it yet. But dude, they need to get with the program. It's retarded. But anyways, we'll keep going. Or any comments, Jordan?
No, let's keep going.
Okay.
Oh, men don't love me. That's a hard lesson to unlearn because it gets solidified at an early age. And then once those lessons are there, there's an internalized danger to go revisit them. Like if you go revisit that lesson, could you be disappointed, right? The thought is that's the way it is. And that's the way it's going to be. Like that's kind of what we tell ourselves inside. The trauma kind of walls it off. And then we don't just go back and look and say, is that really true? Like here I am, I'm an adult now. And did I just carry forward something when I was 4 years old that wasn't about me? Is it really about the 4-year-old, right? Or is it about the adult? Like we learn all these things, but we don't go back and revisit the lesson. And then, yes, there's a person who could be very avoidant in
Yeah, we do it, and he does it too. He just doesn't use super neuroplasticity to rapidly rewire.
Mm-hmm. And he said, I think he said that did he say it's hard to do that or something? It's actually not that difficult when you have the right tool set. It's got to use the right tools for the job.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know. Here's my free program. You can do it for free. That's this right here. Now, people who take it seriously, they watch the training video, they do the worksheets, they give it a serious shot. That might take you 2 or 3 hours, and then you listen to a 45-minute audio. About 80% of those people get big results, and they email me and they tell me, and it's awesome. And I remember I did the inner game group with John Hogwood, Modern Life Dating. Those people, they paid to get access to this, so they took it seriously. And I have 30.
Do you mean inner game healing?
Inner game healing, yeah.
Yeah.
I have 30 written testimonials. People are like, oh my goodness, what the hell just happened? I feel like I dropped 50 pounds. I had someone contact me, and he's like, I did your free course, and then I lost 50 pounds. And I kept it off, and I've struggled with weight my whole life, and so about 80% though, there's about 20% who they need a one-on-one session. They need that one-on-one guidance. Okay. But hey, you can try it for free, and this very well could change your life, just so you guys know. And we'll keep going.
All right.
Yeah, we're not too much longer. We'll wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Ways that lesson, that quote unquote truth that is not true, can change that person's life. And that's why if we go back and look at that, life can really change. We can go back and look at, why do you feel that? It's interesting to feel that. Let's think about it. And what's the story behind it? And we can get to a place where that can be undone and say, oh, I took that lesson inside because someone else made a choice that was about them and not me. No 4-year-old is responsible for a parent leaving, right? But I took something in that was different, and it's really affected me, and I kind of feel differently about myself. It's not that everything instantaneously changes, but boy, the world is different then.
Okay, well, and that's the thing. So he has all the pieces of the puzzle, except he doesn't understand you can put your brain in a state where that belief system can instantly change instead of slowly over time. 1 shot, 2 shots, something like that for not everyone, but for more than 90%, especially when it's a guided session, it can be instant. So that's all I had. Anything to add? But honestly, Dr. Conti, he knows everything except that final piece. And I think he's a great guy. I think he's really helping people. I just wish he had this final piece that would make it work 30 times faster. Anything to add, Jordan?
Yeah. So if you guys have thoughts on the show, leave us a comment down below. Give us a like and subscribe. Helps grow the channel, helps grow the show. Because we're trying to make this. We know that. See, all these pieces are in place. He's not the first expert we've covered that.
So many are so close.
They're so close. So what the goal of this show and the goal of Ryan and I's channels is to break that ice. Build up enough momentum so that this gets out to people, so that people can experience the life-changing effects that our methods have. So help share this with friends, family, people you don't like. Tell them to get help. I'm just kidding, but
yeah,
so that it helps us out. So.
All right, so that's our show. You can rewire your brain using these methods. You may think, oh yeah, I don't have severe childhood trauma. Well, maybe you don't, but almost all of us have some trauma. You get rid of it, and all of a sudden your life is better. You're kicking more ass. You're making more money. You're getting the relationships you want. You're getting rid of toxic relationships. You can let stuff go. You just have this inner authentic confidence. It's pretty awesome. It doesn't mean your life all of a sudden becomes perfect, but now you get this authenticity, toughness, resilience, and self-belief. And once you get that, it changes everything. And we actually have the power to go in and rewire our own brain. Even just, I fixed 95% of my trauma when I found self-hypnosis. It was me listening to the audio guiding me through the process of fixing my own brain. You can do it. And when you do that, it changes everything. We truly do have more power than we know. That's our show. Thank you.